I'll keep my. I assume just slightly off center like that is okay.
Yeah. That's it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Live from Pacific Junction Hotel, Girth Radio in session.
Welcome to my Summer Lair. I'm here hanging out with Scott McCloud, and I'm your host, Sammy Younan. How's it going, Scott?
Pretty good, Sammy. Thanks for having me.
We were just talking off air. You spent 100 days on the road.
Yeah.
Pushing and plugging and advertising and making jokes for the Sculptor.
Yeah.
That's a long road trip.
Yeah, well, when my last book, Making Comics, came out in 2006, my wife and my family and I, we went on the road for an entire year. And we went to all 50 states, 4 cities in Canada, England, and Spain, all in exactly 1 year. So in a way, 100 days is not that much. But this time we have more countries because the book came out in so many languages all at once.
Mm-hmm. That's one of your themes, I guess, from all your comic book writing in terms of like reinventing comics and whatever. Like it's more and more languages now. It's the genre itself is getting bigger. The medium's getting bigger. It's going all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different comics cultures. Not even just in other languages, but even in North America, there are a lot of different locations. We're seeing a spread of comics culture that you'd think might make things more homogenized with the web and all, but there are different scenes now. It's different in Austin than it is in New York than it is in LA than it is in Toronto. It's like all these different places have their own character, their own local artists, their own local scene. I like that. It's kind of cool. It's like oysters now. They're the comics taste different depending on where you get them.
That's a good way to put it. Is it the community, I guess, that's kind of making the difference, or is it they're influenced by the city, or like what makes each scene kind of different?
I think cartoonists are influenced by each other. Like they have their friends, they have the places that they like to draw. Maybe they want to draw in a particular bar. Maybe they draw in somebody's house.
Mm-hmm.
My old friend Matt Fazell, like once a week, maybe he's even still doing it, would get together with all the local cartoonists in this little house in Hamtramck, Michigan, and they just sit in the living room and just draw and have fun. It's great. Everybody's reinventing what it means to make comics on a local level.
Yeah. And you're finding, too, that the readership is also growing, obviously, because the fact that your book, Sculptor, which is like, it looks dense, but it's like, it's panels and everything.
It's actually a pretty quick read for 500
yeah.
pages. Yeah.
So it's a bit of a lie, right? So, and you're finding that it's being well received, too, like as it gets translated into the different languages and countries and things like that, right?
Yeah, it's been pretty amazing. Yeah, we finished up in Italy, and it was just standing room only again and again, and it just went really well overseas. And it's funny because we're kind of reinventing the wheel with each new launch. It's like, oh, it's February again, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the book came out yesterday. I remember that. Yeah, we get to do that again because each time I would arrive in the country just as the book arrived.
And are you surprised, or are you at the reactions it's getting, or is this what you kind of expected when you set out to write it and draw the whole thing?
So far it's been pretty good because I'm getting a lot of the same reactions I was hoping for. Like when I started the book, I told my editor, I told my friends that I just wanted it to just be readable. I wanted it to be a page turner.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want people stopping and thinking, "Oh, look at that clever way that he arranged the panels." It's like, screw that. No, I wanted them to just start, page 1, page 2, and by page 3 I wanted them to just forget that they were even reading anything. I just wanted it to be a story. I want them to get lost all the way through, and it seems to be that. It seems to have that page-turning quality.
Yeah, I found it very, I stayed up late at night, so.
Cool. Yeah, no, I like to hear that.
Yeah, so just to finish it, because it's like, because you know how it is, like, as the countdown of the days starts to go, right? The pressure's on now, so I want to see how it kind of all wrapped up and.
No, that's good news. Yeah, I measure books in like how much they inconvenience people. Like I want to hear about.
That's a good metric. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I want to hear about people who like miss train stops or like oh man, I was so tired I failed that test.
Yeah,
because I was up till 5 a.m. or whatever. That's always good.
So the book butterfly effect is what you're after.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. I wanted a widening radius of disaster.
Okay,
to follow my
well there
books.
you go. I was all cranky the next day at work. So
good, perfect.
Yeah, I'll just throw you under the bus next time. So I wish you had told me earlier. I know what this is implying, but reading the book as well, this is not something that a young man could have written.
Yeah.
So
it's a story that a young man came up with because I came up with a long time ago. But yeah, it's kind of the old man who said, "Okay, move over, Junior. Let me take this thing. You got this big operatic, like big idea, art and life and death. That's what a 25-year-old comes up with, right? That kind of story." But yeah, I wrote the thing when I was almost 50 years old, and so what I tried to do is I tried to keep some of the vitality the young man's story, and but maybe write it with a little bit more perspective. Perspective of somebody who'd been around long enough. Themes like acceptance and futility, that's not the kind of thing.
A 20-year-old's not really thinking about that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not on your radar,
No.
when you're just out of college. But it's something that I was thinking more of, as an older person. So I tried to get a balance in there. I didn't want to extinguish the flame, so the thing still feels a little like it's very operatic. It's very... Maybe that's why I did good in Italy. I don't know.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. It has, like the big gestures and the big ideas. But yeah, I think a lot of the soul of the book, I think, is more in the small moments, the little things.
And does it take, generally when you have an idea, like any idea, do you just need that time to kind of percolate? You kind of put the tea bag in and just let it sit and...
Well, I did this time. I mean, sometimes I'll just go right to it, But yeah, I think that the things that work best for me are things that have been sitting around for a long time. Understanding comics, I had a long time to think about that stuff. And when I finally wrote the book, it was just like, yeah, this is what I've been working on all along. Even in college, I was kind of working on that one idea. But this was a really long time that it was just kind of sitting on the back burner. And, people say, like, why this story? Why now? And in some ways, the big question is, why did I wait so long?
Yeah.
And I think it was because part of me was reluctant to do yet another story that had like a superpower in it, and it's like, okay, enough already. It's like, I've been talking about how comics can be so much more than superheroes, and I do believe that, but here there was this little piece of it's almost a superhero story, this one, and I think maybe part of this has been me accepting that, okay, this is like an accent that I can't get rid of. This is like this language that I was speaking when I was a kid. And maybe it's okay. Maybe I have to let it go and say, yeah, I am an American comics artist. And, here in North America, superheroes, they were never too far behind. There's going to be that little trace of it in my work.
Mm-hmm. In general, too, there is a connection between kind of artists and superheroes. In real life, artists really inspire people, and they kind of they challenge them. They make them see things differently. And it's the same thing when you see Superman or somebody just kind of flying across the sky. That changes your whole like paradigm and shifts your perspective.
Well, now that you mention it, if you like name a superpower, and I can probably give you the equivalent in art, right? To walk through walls, to breach barriers, to fly, to lift mountains. I mean, these are the things that artists do in a lot of ways. We're always breaking through walls. We're always helping people to breach barriers between each other, to connect great distances, to imagine whole worlds, create worlds. We create worlds.
Yeah.
Like what better superpower is than that? So yeah, I mean, in a way, it's kind of a solid analogy.
Yeah, and you don't have to wear spandex. You can just
right? You don't have to look
you
too
can just
ridiculous.
stay home and no pants, and then you can do all of that stuff. And is that part of what you also want to explore as well with the Sculptor, like that whole artist journey? Because the artist journey is a little bit like, what is it, the 5 stages of like grief, where it's like acceptance and denial and anger.
Yeah. Somebody said that like to write a novel is like every novel is just a postponed suicide or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's how I look at art, but I do think that a lot of this is about kind of the artistic process. Duchamp said as he got older that he was less interested in art, more interested in artists. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of ways, this is a book it's about an artist. It's in fact, I'm saying very little about art itself, but I'm really interested in why people make stuff. And we go through certain journeys where we're like, okay, yeah, we want to be remembered. We want to make something that lasts. But, at the end of the day, I realized this was actually a story about somebody who was terrified of being forgotten, which is a little bit different. It's like there you're railing against the human condition. Now you're going back to like Greek tragedies and like the idea of railing against your fate.
Yeah.
And the only way really for that to be an emotionally satisfying book is if in the end it's also about accepting that condition. So I have a character who kind of accepts it, but he kind of is rebelling against it even as he accepts it. It's kind of hard to describe, but the ending twists in 2 ways at the end.
Yeah. I know it's hard to talk about it on the air, but I found the last panel especially, like it's almost like a full circle journey now, where I found the last panel, I was like, oh, because like I said, I stayed up late at night, so I was like, everybody was all asleep, there's nobody to talk to, I was like, oh, snap! So it's like...
Yeah, there's a bit of a circular thing without giving away too much, yeah.
And then, as you said, though, part of, like, you're interested in kind of, like, the not being forgotten and stuff like that in terms of the art. And you, as you just said, you're, like, an American who, like, makes comic books and things like that. So when you enter a medium like comic books, which has a dense history, like Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Kurt Swan. Okay, that's a random reference. Yeah, so
Good old Kurt Swan.
Kurt
Okay.
Swan,
Now
yeah.
you see, now you're marked, right?
Yeah.
Anyone can pull out Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, but
yeah.
oh, now okay.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
you know
yeah.
your comics.
Yeah, so yeah, there's like a litmus test there. Yeah, so. But when you enter a medium like that, which has a dense history and dense characters like that, like those gentlemen, is there a pressure, or are you aware of like the legacy or the contribution? Because you even talked just now about the butterfly effect that your book has, right? So are you aware of the legacy, or like, I know it's hard to want to leave a legacy, but
well, I kind of have a flat view of comics history. I don't look at it as this hierarchy where like the further back you go, the more it becomes like Mount Rushmore or something.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that came because I knew Will Eisner. And a lot of cartoonists in my generation knew the guy because he was super accessible. And this guy. There was no bigger giant, of American comics than Will Eisner. Jack Kirby worked for him. He was really the architect of the whole way that we told long form stories in American comics. But he was just a guy. I mean, it was just he was super accessible. He would always talk to young cartoonists, and so I didn't have that sense of awe of of the successive generations. It didn't feel to me like you had to like pay tribute to the comics gods or anything like that. So for me, it was just a big playground. I would say, okay, I'm going to take from this guy, this here's a good idea from this period of comics, here's a good idea from this period, but it was just a big junk pile, you know. And I think it's healthy to think of yourself as a peer with the artists of the past and the artists of the future too, and think of it like the one who's just starting out now but has a vision for comics maybe that's still a little rough, but they really, you can tell they have a piece of the secret too. You just try to learn from everybody and then just sort it out on the back end, and that's what I tried to do.
And is that how you're defining success as well too? Because that's part of being an artist and being a comic book writer or artist too, right? Is how you define success, what makes the sculptor successful.
What's how I define learning, and that's for me, that's what learning is all about. Success is, I don't know, what is success, man?
I haven't figured that out.
I have no idea.
I know they tell us it's like the house and the car and like, you know what I mean? But I'm like, I'm not really sure I agree with that.
I think it's healthy to define success book by book, project by project, right? Because each project has its own like natural form. And for some things, maybe all you want to do is like prove some crazy creative idea. Say like, oh, can I do this? Can I make this work? Can I demonstrate something? Okay, that's one way to look at a project. Art Spiegelman did that a lot when he was just starting out with his early comics that were collected in something called breakdowns. Each one of them was this old little crazy proof of concept thing. But it's not at all what he tried to do when he did Mouse. There he was just trying to tell the story straight and document the experiences of his father in the Holocaust, his relationship with his dad, at least in the first volume, and then it got all meta after that. But so in other words, each project, it's like a kid. You have a kid, and you need to let that kid grow up and be themselves, and every kid wants to be a different human being. So like I say, it's case by case. Every book has a different definition of success.
And are you getting, I know you've been doing this for a while, but are you getting more comfortable, more deft with the medium and like what it can do? And
well, one thing is I'm getting more comfortable with my tools because I was never really great at pen and ink. My problem is that I don't get the drawing right the first time, and that kind of stinks if you work with traditional tools.
Yeah.
But I'm working digitally now, which even though it's still hand drawn, it's hand drawn on a thing called a Cintiq tablet where you draw directly on the screen. It's digital so that I can go back, I can resize things, I can move stuff around, and for me that's just perfect because I do a kind of crappy drawing, and then I fix it all day long until the thing looks okay, and now I have all these tools to help me do it. So I'm more comfortable that way, and then I'm also like learning how to apply all of these crazy ideas that I had about making comics to actually making comics, right? I just made a big fat comic that was 500 pages long, and I knew I got better because by the time I got to the end, the first 50 pages looked like crap again to me, and I had to go back and redo those. So I assume I must have improved somewhere down the line.
That's encouraging, though, to know that you're like getting better and that these ideas are working out.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was great. It felt really good that it's like, now I'm good enough to look at this stuff and see it looks like, it needs fixing.
And are you able to let it go? Obviously, once it gets out into the public, are you able to, again, like you said, the children analogy? Are you able to let that, like, drop them off at college or whatever, and then now that's it? You're on your own?
Well, exactly. It's like like, hey, honey, you can't drop him off at college. He's not perfect yet, right? No, no way. Like when you let the book go, because it's time to let it go, not because it's perfect. I can open up any 2 pages of that book or anything else I've ever done, and I could point to a dozen things that are just like, well, that's kind of a weak design there. That's not a very convincing face. This looks a little bit stiff. But it's like, but it was the best I could make at the time.
Yeah.
And that's all you can ask of yourself. At a certain point, you gotta let it go.
Yeah, that's valid. Meg in the book, she was inspired through the connection through your wife.
Yeah.
I don't want to give away too much, obviously, but what was her reaction, I guess? I guess she was in the loop the whole time as you were writing the book and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, Ivy knew about the story and the character decades before I got around to actually doing it. We've been married 27 years, and that
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's
Most
been
people
awesome.
only last about 27 minutes these days, so...
Yeah. No, I think we're kind of lifers at this point.
Yeah.
But she knew about the story from the very beginning because I was inspired to create this character in this story when I was secretly in love with her for like 7 years. Nobody knew about it. And so the story actually predates our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been talking about the thing forever. And she likes it. She likes being a muse. And she's a capital M muse, right? Not like a little muse. She's like up there with Sarah Bernhardt now because she inspired the creation of a character.
Mm-hmm.
She gave voice to the character in a lot of ways. Every time I sat down to write the dialogue with that character, I've got Ivy in my head. Who do I talk to all day long? It was easy. It was just like turning on a faucet to write that dialogue. Now, she's different. This character of Meg is different in some ways than my wife, but she's like 70% my wife. And there's maybe 30% of me in my protagonist, the artist.
Yeah, that was my next question. So what was roughly the 30% that you kind of drew upon to insert into David Smith?
Well, I was kind of becoming David Smith. And we should say his name, David Smith, anyone who knows about sculpture in North America knows that there was a very famous sculptor named David Smith. This is his curse.
Yeah.
Is that he's forever the other David Smith.
It's like another comedian named Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. who wants that burden, right?
Yeah.
But this guy is a little bit like I was becoming that guy. When I was in my early 20s, I was becoming very isolated. I was becoming very, like separated from people. I was working all the time, and I was only thinking about work. I was only thinking about like what I was going to do with my art and things like that. And Ivy kind of like at the age of 26 or so, she pretty much swooped in and saved me. I mean, like it's not too different from what happens early in my book. Is that I have this character who pretty much rescues somebody from himself. So I was definitely drawing on that version of me that thank God I left behind, because he's not. Plenty of people have remarked that my protagonist isn't always very likable. He's very wrapped up in himself.
He is, yeah. But I mean, that's part of the whole, and that's why he's able to make that deal too, though, to extend the 200 days and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somebody in his position, it's a natural to want to find quote unquote a shortcut or a way out.
Exactly. He wants to go straight to the bliss, right?
Yeah.
And we should explain. He makes a deal with death in the form of his deceased great uncle Harry. That he's going to have the power to mold anything he wants with his bare hands. He's a sculptor.
Yeah.
But in exchange, he only has 200 days to live. And he goes right for it. As soon as he understands what he's got in front of him, he takes that deal. I would not take that deal myself.
I wouldn't take it either, actually, because I mean, the time alone, just to have the 200 days, that hanging over you is just too much. It's because I think that's one of the beautiful things about being an artist is you don't ever retire. Like accountants and lawyers retire. Artists just die. You can kind of keep working right up to the last day, depending on how you go out.
Oh, we were talking about that just today. Miyazaki, the great Japanese animator, I heard, I don't know if this is true for sure, but I heard that he retired, quote unquote. And what that meant was he went to 5 days a week.
Yeah.
But then he couldn't stand it after a while, and he had to go back to 6 days a week. That's totally me. When I'm 80, I'm going to be that guy.
Yeah. No, that's a great way to put it. And I mean, that's the privilege of this like lifestyle, right? Like, you can kind of keep working, and you don't always necessarily. And I mean, you're in a great position too, where you don't always have to show everything to the public too.
Yeah.
You can kind of just doodle some stuff and then just kind of put it away.
Exactly, and you can go right to it. Right, pick up a napkin, go.
Mhm.
It's different than if you're like a movie director or orchestra conductor.
Yeah.
You need a lot of collaboration. You need people there on the set helping you make that thing happen. But the cartoonists can just go, just make it happen any time they want.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and yeah, I'm really blessed. And like, I don't know, when people hear that you make comics for a living, they think, oh man, that must be an amazing job. And then the next thing they think to themselves, yeah, but it's probably a lot of work, and it's probably not all it's cracked up to be. It's like, no, it is exactly as great as it sounds. It is hard work.
Yeah.
It's tremendously hard work, and the money's not always great, but it's a great job. It's a wonderful job. I love making comics.
How do you combat then the cynicism then? Because you're optimistic in almost two ways, right? Like you just said, comics is a great job. That's your own personal job. But you also are a big advocate of getting other people to read comics and make comics and like of the medium itself. How do you combat cynicism or like just like the frustration if it's like not going anywhere or people just going to the lowest common denominator?
Well, dealing with people, like having people in our family who've battled with depression, sometimes sadness comes out of nowhere. Well, sometimes optimism does too. And I guess, for whatever reason, I seem to have an optimistic nature. The world is an interesting place. And, like when I look at, the possibilities of art, I'm just always seeing possibilities everywhere. I'm seeing potential everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, it's almost kind of cruel that like when I teach comics, I'll get 24 kids in front of me and I'm looking at 24 potential great comics artists.
Yeah.
That isn't really the reality.
No,
right?
no.
Like the chances are of those 24 kids that 23 of them will never, ever, ever, make great comics. But I just feel like, no, but it's possible.
Yeah.
I can't help but see in them that possibility. And so I guess it's just my natural disposition, to go in that direction. My dad was the same way.
Mm-hmm.
He was an engineer, he's an inventor. But, you can't predict. I mean, okay, you can be optimistic in a foolish way, which is to predict that everything's going to turn out great, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be on guard against that. On the other hand, there's a different kind of optimism, which is you look at the world, you look at the landscape, you look at the human landscape, and you see potential everywhere. You see that everybody has this path that they could take to make amazing things. Well, that's actually true. It's like atom smashing. Like how each atom contains in it this tremendous power if you can break apart the nucleus or whatever it is that they do. I don't know anything about.
I don't know. I got an English degree,
physics.
so I'm going to nod
right
now. Yeah, I'm following.
But the potential's there. There's enormous
yeah.
power. That is true. That is true in each and every person. It doesn't mean they're going to find it. But to know that power is there, that's a fact. And I can't help but see that power in everyone and everything. It's there. It's out there. And that keeps me hopeful.
In a way, what you're talking about is you. This sounds condescending, but it's not how I mean it. But you're talking about like the way that we treat kindergarten children. They come home with this like weird scribble or whatever, and it's like, look, it's a turtle, and it doesn't look like a turtle at all. But you're like, this is amazing, and then you put it up on the wall, and it's like it goes on the fridge or on the wall.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, but that's exactly it. Right. What do you see in kids? You see potential.
Mm-hmm.
You see promise. Now. Okay, so here I'm an optimistic artist. We're talking about like the way I'm always seeing that potential. I'm always seeing the best. I'm always seeing like what people can do. But there's a dark side to that, and I guess in a lot of ways that's what, as an old man, the old man who came in and took the young man's idea for this new book, that's what I saw. I began to see the dark side of that. And now I'm beginning to understand that there's kind of a morbid quality to promise, a morbid quality to the young hopeful. Like, every failed career was once like this promising kid that could do no wrong in the eyes of their parents or something like that.
Yeah.
And there is something a little dark about that, is that like for every Beethoven or Picasso or Michelangelo, there are like 999,000 also rans.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways the new graphic novel is in many ways about those guys. Because I think their story is interesting too, but it's not always as Well, it can be inspiring, but it's not always as happy a story.
Potential's a horrible, not maybe horrible is a strong word, but potential's a horrible burden to live with, because once again, it's the kindergarten analogy, right? Once they see you're an artist, whatever, then you want to keep drawing these little scribbles and you want to keep doing them, and then that's where the rub is, because after grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, you can't do the scribble anymore. It has to start looking like a turtle. It has to start looking like a house.
It's a long, long path to true success. The kind of things that like we're all. That we dream of. Everybody dreams about it. Everybody dreams of being behind the podium at the Academy Awards or like at the museum show or whatever. And how many people actually get to do that,
Yeah.
And how many people are forgotten and, shortly after they die, sometimes forgotten even before they die, But I guess what I wanted to do was tell their story too and say, no, but there's still something noble about this, still something worth telling about that kind of artist too. It's not enough to just tell the story about the great artists. I'm seeing other, it's interesting. It's happening in an interesting time. Other people in motion pictures, I think, are starting to grapple with that same basic idea. I think, you might say the Birdman in a way is kind of looking at that. There have been a couple of things lately that's it seems to be in the air that suddenly people are realizing, no, let's look at the 999,999 that don't make it. Their story's interesting too.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason that's being triggered is because the internet now allows you to at least stick around a little bit longer and to kind of build a niche.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It might be a very small niche. It only might be your mom and dad, but it goes back to what we were talking about, legacy, and because you can put something up on the internet and it's there potentially forever.
Yeah, well, actually, this is interesting because in some ways, this story about being forgotten, being, the futility of being remembered, in a lot of ways is actually kind of a 20th century capstone. It's not necessarily a 21st century story. It's maybe like finishing up the last century because we may be entering an era where nobody gets forgotten. We may be entering an era where we're at the beginning of true history, where everything is recorded, everybody's work is accessible forever, and so it's got this kind of strange, eerie quality. We might even be near, entering a century now. In the 21st century, we may be in a century where death itself is in some ways reverse. Reverse.
Death is obsolete.
Yeah, death is obsolete. So am I telling a story about the world I grew up in more than a story about the world that we're going into? And I don't know yet, but I'd be okay with that. It'd be okay if it's sort of pointing backwards to where I began.
And I find the other thing too, what's unique about what you're talking about, the old school, pre-internet days, is there was a level of anonymity. So like Bruce Springsteen, for example. Before he was Bruce Springsteen, he was just a dude with a guitar and he had his dream, and you know what I mean. Then he achieved a certain level of fame, and you've done the same thing too with all your books and your comic book writing. You've achieved a certain level of fame and notoriety. And
I've clawed my way to the middle.
You clawed your way to the middle, yeah. I guess, do you ever want to kind of go back, or does that affect how the ideas that you create or whatever, or is that?
What's the nice thing about being a cartoonist is you always go back, right? You can always just put something in a sketchbook or put up a little webcomic that hardly anyone sees, just screw around. You can always screw around. You could just get together with some friends and draw on cocktail napkins. You don't have to make it this big showcasey thing. You don't have to make it some magnum opus. You can just have fun, and that's really nice because even the really successful cartoonists, we're not rock stars, the whole world is not watching.
Nobody lines up around the block for you people.
Exactly. Unless you're Neil Gaiman, you're probably just, you get a little notoriety, but you can still walk from one end of the Mall of America to the other and not be stopped. And that's actually kind of nice because who wants, real celebrities? Like, screw that. That's no way to live.
Yeah, because they rip your shirt and stuff like that. So,
did you hear Kevin Bacon was talking about, I guess he got a makeup guy to make up his face, so he didn't look anything like himself, and he went for a walk in the mall. And the interviewer was like, "Well, how did you like it? Was it funny?" He said, "No, I didn't like it at all.
Yeah.
People aren't nice to you."
See, I know it's weird. It's weird to kind of go back. It's that whole Clark Kent Superman thing, right? So they'll treat Superman one way and Clark another way, and nobody likes the way they treat Clark.
Well, all cartoonists are basically Clark Kent.
Yeah.
So we get to, but it's nice. I think most of us understand that. No, we get the better end of the deal, right? Because we get to communicate with a big audience we're behind the drawing board. We're still just the schmo who's, in a check shirt or whatever, who's just going to the supermarket every day.
And Chris Rock talks about that in terms of comedy, because he likes to travel on his own without an entourage or whatever, so that he can kind of mingle with people and kind of hear stories and language and things like that. And does that kind of translate for how you work as well? The fact that you can kind of blend in as Clark Kent.
Yeah, well, I like to listen to conversations and all. Like I had some lines that I got from just like riding the bus and things like that when I was first writing comics. Yeah, I remember I was sitting in front of there was this old guy was hitting on this like young girl. I never even saw their faces, but I could tell the situation.
Yeah.
Right? And at one point she said something that I just loved. She said, "I think I'll always look young. I know I always have." And I thought there's something so poignant and beautiful about that.
That's really nice.
I totally stole it and put it in a story.
That should be like a Hallmark moment or something like that. I don't know. That's fantastic. And I guess that's what you're talking about. You see inspiration and ideas everywhere. So you're just like constantly inspired then.
Yeah, well, I compare myself to like that little blender size thing in Back to the Future. At the end of Back to the Future, Christopher Lloyd comes flying back in this flying DeLorean, right? And he says, "Marty, you got to come with me, and we got to go to the future." And he's out of fuel, so he goes to this thing called Mr. Fusion, which is this little thing the size of a coffee maker, and he unscrews it and puts some garbage in it, and now and it runs on garbage. I run on garbage. I basically my brain is Mr. Fusion. I'll let anything in. All my filters are on the back end. And not everybody does that. For some people, it's like all about making sure you only have the best diet, you only read the best books, you only watch certain, vetted movies that, made it through the festivals or whatever like that. You make sure you don't consume any junk. But I believe in back end filters because I think everybody has a piece of the puzzle. So I'll learn from everything, anyone, anything at all, any kind of life experience, any kind of media. You never know who's going to have a piece of the puzzle. So yeah, it's all back end for me.
How do you maintain that curiosity? Because that's part of, I guess, that's your secret formula, if anything, right? Is you're kind of always curious. You're always kind of checking things out. You're always experimenting.
Yeah.
How do you maintain that?
I don't know. At some point it might just die.
That's it. You run out of it, eh?
Yeah.
And
no, I don't know what the fuel is.
Yeah.
I guess just like having fun, watching stuff. I'm a pretty voracious media consumer. Ivy and I met in the movies back in college, and we go to movies all the time. Sit right in the front row or the second row and just let it just completely swallow us whole. None of this sitting in the back like it's TV in your living room. Come on.
You want to keep it real.
Yeah, we want it to swallow us.
Yeah,
we want to be consumed. I'll binge watch TV. Go for long walks, read audiobooks, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I guess that's probably the secret right now is just like make sure that I'm swallowed up by experiences. And one of the things that Ivy does is she pulls me out of the studio, right? Because I'd just be staying in and drawing all the time, except she's like, hell no, we're going to take this invitation to Spain or whatever, and we're going to go somewhere. We're going to see some stuff. We're going to meet some people. She pulls me out into the world, and that keeps me curious too, because I'm constantly stimulated with stuff.
We've had you talked about the movies. We've had that big explosion, obviously, with the Marvel movies, and DC's got a whole slate of them. But the graphic novels, that medium's kind of like it's been a little slow coming in terms of being translated from book to movie. Have you sold the Sculptor to movie rights, or
there is a definitely a deal underway with Sony and Scott Rudin. But the news of it leaked very early. That is basically we had a handshake, and the next thing we knew, it was in the Hollywood Reporter. So I don't know if we pissed off somebody in North Korea, or I don't know how it happened. But the news got out there super early, so it's still in the early stages, that thing. But it is going to happen, and or at least it's very likely it's going to happen.
That's cool.
I mean, we, like I say, we love the movies. I think, in many ways, this particular story for me, it felt natural. Even as I was working on it, I was thinking, this will probably be a movie. I kind of never had any doubt that eventually this would be a movie, just because of the nature of the story, the way I was telling the story, and because also I was putting on that hat where it was all about the story, which is different than other things I've done where it was more about the form, more about experimentation. This thing was just about pure storytelling, and a pure storyteller is like, I'd like it to be a comic, like it to be a movie, like it to be a book. You want to see the story travel. So for me, that was just, it was a natural, it was a no-brainer. The thing about adaptation though is, sometimes the source material is never sacred, right? But sometimes the source material is really good, and you hope that the movie is going to be loyal to the source material. Sometimes the source material it's uneven, and you kind of hope that the filmmaker will make up a lot of new stuff and really just come up with something out of their own heads. Both can work, it depends. You just hope that the filmmaker is going to have as much loyalty to their chosen art as the cartoonist hopefully did to theirs. And I think the track record's actually been pretty good. Those superhero movies, I don't read a lot of superhero comics, although there are a couple of good ones. But I got to admit, I kind of like the superhero movies. They've been a lot of fun.
They are. It's just they're your garden variety summer blockbuster. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're doing blockbusters right. They're
Yeah.
actually they're entertaining, they're funny, they're exciting. They're spectacular to look at. Some are a little overloaded. Most are a little overloaded.
But that's what you pay for. That's what the whole point of a blockbuster is, though.
A lot of them, yeah.
You know what I mean?
But there have been some great movies. I thought Nolan's Dark Knight was a great movie. Loved the original Avengers movie. Was fantastic. Love that Marvel franchise. You should always give a little money to some Kirby-related charity when you do it, just because.
Yeah, I feel bad for the dude. Yeah,
that was not cool. That his estate has not gotten what they should have. But just as movies, just on their own merits, they're fun. What else can you want but for them to be funny and exciting and cool to look at?
It's funny because we've talked a couple of times about that whole idea of legacy and everything, and you just mentioned Kirby. Do you think as you talk to more and more, and as you teach, and more people are writing comics and drawing comics, are they more aware of the potential for making something great or the money that's on the table? Even do they get distracted by those things? Because obviously when Kirby was doing stuff, the dude that sold Superman, they had no idea. Yeah, this is not going to go anywhere.
Yeah,
right.
Well, the guys who sold Superman, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, famously got ripped off. They sold away all the rights to Superman.
I think it was $130 or something.
Yeah, on the back of their first check. It was awful. But it was the Depression, and they had it was 1939, I think it was, or 38, and they had been shopping that thing around for ages. They were very grateful to get anything at all, but of course they got screwed in the long run. Despite the efforts of some people, we should say some people at DC were agitating to get them at least something.
Mm-hmm.
But wait, what was the question? I forgot the question.
No, it's good though. We should stick up for the little guy. No, it's just that I was saying, because you were saying you're teaching and you're kind of encouraging people to do more, create more comics.
Oh yeah, dude.
Are they aware of the fact that they could create something great now, which is kind of like a mind shift that they didn't have back in the day?
Well, one of the nice things now is that when kids are starting to make comics now, they look around and they say, "Oh crap!" There are successful people, but each one of them reinvented the whole definition of success just for them, right? So you have all these one-offs. You have all these people who made their own careers that are not like anybody else's careers, and they just had to figure it out on their own. That's kind of healthy. Back in the old days when I started out, there was one track to success. It's you get a major publisher to swallow your thing and then pump it out there, and then everybody wants to read it. It's not like that at all. Now you have web entrepreneurs, you have Kickstarter success stories, you have weird crazy niche comics, Hyperbole and a Half or XKCD. These things are nothing like each other. They're nothing like anyone else. But that's good because the message that the cartoonists get is, I got to make something that cannot be ignored, something really great, and then I'm just going to figure out on the back end how to make some money from it, right?
Yeah,
it's just there's going to be some way.
Mm-hmm.
First I get 1 million people reading me.
Yeah.
Then I figure out the rest later, which means that the art comes first. You got to make something great first. And maybe that's going to take 10 or 20 years to make that thing that has that demand, that has that pull. And then you figure it out. Then after the fact, you figure out how is that going to make money. And the fact is, if you got 1 million eyeballs on you, there's probably going to be some way. But the way you do it now in 2015 is going to be different than 2017 and 19. And it might take you 10 years to get that good. So don't worry about it. Just make great comics, and the rest can follow.
But that's part of the impatience, I guess, and that's why David Smith was able to cut the deal, because when the deal came,
Yeah, my protagonist definitely
Yeah.
has the impatience. Yeah, you can't have the
And to
impatience.
tell somebody like you'll be good in 10 years.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating because it's like they want to get to the level like you are at or Neil Gaiman or anybody else, you know what I mean, where they're like got the million eyeballs.
I vividly remember being told by some people, yeah, another couple of years, maybe your figure drawing will be good enough. I remember, and that pissed me off. I didn't want to wait 2 years. I
Yeah.
want it now. But yeah, you gotta keep working at it.
Are you getting more patient as you go further along in your career, or are you getting more
Yeah.
impatient?
No, I'm getting more patient. It's good. Knowing Will Eisner helped, and again, a lot of us knew Will personally. A lot of people in my generation, and he was on a slow clock. That guy retired at 59 and retired from the army, right?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
he's retired.
Yeah.
He's ready to go, sun on the porch. Guy goes out, does 20 graphic novels or something.
Yeah.
For the next 27 years. So that's a model. That's a slow clock that he was on, and I like to think of myself as on a slow clock.
That's the other kind of quote unquote lie too that we get, where it's like everything is kind of pushed to us as like the young superstar, the 20-year-old, the 25-year-old.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Well, they're out there. I mean, there are people who
For sure.
burn like comets early on.
But at the same time, like I started off this interview and I just said like this is obviously a book that a young person couldn't have written, right?
Yeah.
So
Although we should say a young person could
Could-
read it, and in
Yeah.
some ways, I think I wouldn't necessarily call it young adult fiction, but it has some of the flavor of that, and I wouldn't mind at all the idea of some kid in high school reading it. I think it would be kind of cool to read it when you're young.
that would help a lot more than a guidance counselor as well too, because when you're trying to decide between that like art career or like the sensible accounting or something, this might be like a little nice little
Yeah,
textbook.
if you're 17 years old, you're gonna have to go for a long walk after reading this
Yeah,
thing,
you're gonna have to sort it all out and like, oh damn, what did I sign up for? So you are you're at a panel on TCAF this weekend. You came at a really
Yeah.
good weekend. It's nice and sunny today.
Oh, it's gorgeous out.
The panel's called How, Where, and Why I Should Start Reading Comics.
Yeah, and that's I think tomorrow, Saturday,
Yeah, 10 a.m.
and then Sunday is the panel about the Sculptor specifically.
Mm-hmm.
But I cannot remember when that is.
Well, it's all on the TCAF website.
Yeah, it's all up there. Yeah, I'm on a few things. There's also a screening of the documentary Stripped, which is a really cool film about about the changing face of comics and the online scene, and a bunch of us will be talking about that.
And in terms of like TCAF events like festivals and like TCAF versus like the kind of the standard Comic-Con cosplay, those type of, do you
Yeah.
have a difference or preference between those two, or do you see anything?
Well, it's all part of the ecology of the ecosystem of comics events. We like that, the Comic-Con is something that's kind of like Thanksgiving for my family. So we go every year to San Diego,
Yeah.
the real Comic-Con.
Yeah,
People
yeah.
get confused about where Comic-Con is. It's
Yeah.
San Diego institution. But the festivals, of course, those are special, and like TCAF and MoCA, SPX. These, they're very art centered. They're very comic centered.
Yeah.
And so that sort of thing has a special place in my heart. In fact, it's been way too long since I've been to SPX. I should make it down that way.
There you go.
TCAF, this will be my third TCAF.
Yeah.
Um,
I've been going to TCAF since it started, and it's been phenomenal just watching the growth and the number of creators and the books you can pick up and the conversations, the panels.
it is a real quality show, and it's it's certainly one of the best anywhere. And one of the reasons is because it's all about the comics. It's all about the guy sitting behind the table selling you the thing they made with their bare hands. There's no replacement for that. And, as somebody who loves comics, it's great to see a show that loves comics and that shows it with each and every person you meet.
So following TCAF and all of the Comic-Con, obviously, the what's next after this for you? What are you going to follow up the Sculptor with?
Well, the next book is actually nonfiction again, like Understanding Comics, but it's not going to be about comics specifically. I want to write a book about the fundamentals of visual communication and education. I think that everything from data visualization to information graphics to presentation software to nonfiction comics, I think all of these things have certain common principles. The way we learn through pictures, I would like to see if I can figure out what those common principles are and write a book about that in comics form, of course.
Is it the medium that you believe in so much, or is it stories that you believe in?
Well, I guess at the end of the day, I'm still a comics loyalist. It's about comics for me. It's about what comics can do. And my whole career, I hope when people look back, they'll see that what I was trying to do was to kind of draw a big fat map showing all these different crazy things that comics could do. The only problem is I'm really, really slow. So as I'm trying to draw all these points, these 20 different points, and each one takes me 7 years to do. The clock's running out. I gotta get around to some of these things.
Yeah, you're like the old school where you preheat the oven, you got to put it in there. You're not a microwave, right?
No, I'm not a microwave guy. And 5 years on this last book, I got to speed up.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll have to bring you back when the next one comes. And
Sounds good.
Hopefully come back for another TCAF as well. That would be awesome.
I hope so. It's a great show.
And thank you so much for the Sculptor. I just really do want to thank you for that. It was a fantastic read, especially because I do a lot of writing and I work with a number of filmmakers and writers and artists and stuff. And so coming from an artist's perspective, it really encapsulates that struggle, the heartache, the joy, all of it. And I wouldn't make the deal either, too, though. So.
Yeah, I would not make that deal.
So I'm willing to just do the long road and then see where I end up. So.
Well, here's to the long road.
The long road. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Sammy.